Citizen Science, stories of science we can do together, aka the SciStarter podcast. In this episode, we wrap up a jam-packed Citizen Science month with a triumphal conclusion of our 1 Million Acts of Science challenge, Solar Eclipse, how to rewild the world, or at least a little patch of it, and some fish who just want to be part of our world for a little while. It's the end of April, it's morning, and that is the sound of my backyard about an hour ago when I got up. Everybody is singing. A little later, we'll be talking about rewilding our environment so that all of those birds, along with the bees and butterflies and bunnies, etc., have what they need to survive, even in a fairly urban area like this. Now, of course, April is Citizen Science Month, and SciStarter has been running the 1 Million Acts of Science Challenge, hoping we could reach that million mark before midnight, April 30th. And I can now report that we made it. In fact, with a few days to go, the 1 millionth act of science was submitted by Cody Briley of Adamsville, Tennessee, for Project FeederWatch, that's run by the Cornell Laboratory of Ornithology. So, really quickly, we reached out to Cody, who sent us this picture. That's Cody on your left. It would be hilarious if that was Cody on the right, but he explained that that is Puddles the Blue Goose, the mascot of the National Wildlife Refuge System, for whom Cody did some volunteer work. Who knew? Anyway, we have Cody on the line right now. Hey, Cody, thanks for joining us.
Appreciate you having me.
And congratulations on submitting our 1 millionth act of science. Could you tell us how you got involved with Project FeederWatch and citizen science in general?
So the way I kind of got into it by coincidence. It was I'm in a naturalist program for the state of Tennessee, and I have a 1-year-old at home, and we have to do these volunteer hours. And I was like, I have no idea how I'm going to volunteer with a 1-year-old. So I did some research and discovered SciStarter, and they allowed us to do things with SciStarter and count that as volunteer time. So like I started doing projects with iNaturalist, Project FeederWatch, just stuff I could do with my 1-year-old. And once I discovered, creating an account with SciStarter and everything, it really just took off. I did the trainings you guys offer, and I threw that out to my bosses, and they're like, well, we're shorthanded as far as PD for science teachers. And I was like, well, this is the perfect solution for that. So yeah, I'm actually on May 16th, we're offering some PD with SciStarter, doing some of those training modules. I'm going to teach them how to get on there and do some of the projects.
That is so gratifying that you're using our training modules. And what are the projects you've worked on so far?
So my biggest one right now is probably Project FeederWatch, because like I said, I have a 1-year-old, and really it's just easy enough. I can get her out with the wagon and do some exploring in the backyard, keeping an eye on my bird feeders, and then taking some photos for iNaturalist. I really enjoyed in the modules, it had us do squirrels, the squirrel one. I can't remember the exact name, but that one was fun too, because I actually got some kids here at the school involved with it. So we would, during some free time, we would sit at the windows here at the school and look for squirrels and log that information. So honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I'm still kind of new to SciStarter. I'm still learning a lot about it, but I'm excited to learn more about the projects you guys have going on.
Well, you are the perfect person to have been the 1 millionth contributor. Do you work in this area? Do you work in the sciences?
Well, I work in McNairy in Tennessee. It's a little town called Adamsville, Tennessee, and that's where I teach. I teach STEM, and it's very web-based, I guess you would say. We use iPads and tech a lot, which is great. Oh, we got an announcement. I apologize.
You're at school.
Yeah, I'm at the school currently. I decided I'd just set up shop here, but we use a lot of iPads and computers, and I'm trying to, I think that's great, but I want to get them outside and doing things as well, so I'm very excited for some more projects to get into as the summer progresses.
And what grade do you teach?
I teach pre-K4 all the way up to 8th grade. So it's a pretty big span. I spend about an hour with my junior high folks, so that's 6th through 8th. And I only get about 30 minutes with the little folks, but it changes from year to year. Usually it stays about an hour for the older kids, though.
And are they able to go outside?
There is a little wiggle room for us to go outside, and I do know that we actually just got a grant to build a pavilion outdoors. Being able to go outside will become more and more possible as the years go on. So,
Wow, that is great. Anything else you want to share?
well, I don't really have anything else. Again, I really appreciate you guys providing that. I'm glad that you make it so accessible to have these training modules and everything. You guys saved me a lot of work as far as volunteer time with this naturalist program that I'm part of. And plus you got my daughter involved, my little 1-year-old. So there's really nothing else to say other than thank you. I really do appreciate all you guys are offering right now. And I'm excited to share that with the other teachers in the community.
Oh, that's perfect. All right. Well, thank you, Cody.
I appreciate it.
Well, we don't have like fabulous prizes, but we did send Cody the SciStarter swag that we do have, a t-shirt and stuff, but mostly I'm hoping that we can stay in touch and build on what he's gotten started there, which kind of begs the question, now what? Now that Citizen Science Month and the 1 Million Acts of Science Challenge are concluding, what's next? And to find out, I've got SciStarter founder Darlene Cavalier. Hey, Darlene. So we've had, 1 million acts of science. A lot of people have jumped in and done it. And then they might be thinking, okay, now what?
Yes, that's exactly right. We don't want to get everybody excited and then not have a follow-on activity for them. Lots of different goals with the program. Of course, helping project leaders and researchers who want to re-engage and re-inspire their communities. It turns out that this friendly opportunity to, I wouldn't say compete, but basically get involved in a shared goal of 1 million acts of science worked for many of them, which is awesome. But at the end of the day, many of these projects need sustained ongoing observations, analysis, and so forth. So we're hoping it's the start of something new for many of the people who got involved for the very first time.
Okay, and do you have any highlights from the month? Were there any things that you were especially happy or excited about?
Yeah, it was very interesting to see people become de facto ambassadors for citizen science. So some people who were familiar with it, maybe part of the SciStarter community, going into libraries, schools, community organizations to really help spread the word, but then becoming really like unofficial ambassadors for the whole entire movement. So that's been really exciting. And it's actually moved us in a direction of formalizing some of these roles and supporting ambassadors to do that, because just like scientists can't be everywhere to collect the data, SciStarter can't be everywhere to continue spreading the word. So that's been really neat to see. Of course, Girl Scouts overseas in particular, they don't often have a network of other Girl Scouts to be able to work with. So they've formed teams online to help accelerate research on Alzheimer's disease, which is an interesting choice for them that has manifested into an actual badge for them. That's a very big program that we're excited to see take off and help support.
Okay, so I know that this month actually was a citizen science project on citizen science in a way, right? Because over the month, we've collected all this data about how people engage in citizen science. Is that going to inform what happens next year or what happens, I don't know, maybe later this year?
Yes, it will inform quickly. I mean, we hope to have the outcomes. There's the unofficial outcomes, and that's really based on our own work, what we can see from the analytics. We have members of our team constantly doing research on who's doing what the numbers look like across different projects. We have a lot of reporting coming in from the projects and so forth. So that'll be ours that we'll share the outcomes with. That's kind of just by the numbers, looking at the landscape analysis and showing really what's happening from what we can see around the world in citizen science. And I mean, I wouldn't doubt that it's actually 10 million acts that actually happens from our community and what was agitated by our community in a good way we know it's more than 1 million. So that's awesome. So telling the fuller story is good. But then we also have our evaluators at Arizona State University really digging into what the outcomes were, a summative evaluation report, which will take time to tell us what the outcomes were, what people thought, what could be improved upon from an individual that's getting involved, from project leaders. What are they seeing in terms of the amount of data, the quality of data coming in, the sustained level of engagement that happens, and then for the facilitators, so they could be librarians, they could be whoever might have facilitated a connection to Citizen Science Month, how we can improve their experiences next year. So all of that goes into helping us understand over the summer how we improve this, what we do leading up towards next year.
Right. Anything else you want to add?
I just want to thank the National Library of Medicine, the All of Us program, the Moore Foundation, just groups, IMLS, Institutes for Museum and Library Services, Arizona State University, and everybody who has really helped support this work and the program, but mostly people who participated. I mean, none of this would happen without them. So we're extremely grateful to the very, very broad SciStarter community and project leaders who took the time to send us reports and get involved.
All right. Thanks, Darlene.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Bob.
Now, last podcast, I had a short feature about the television series Wild Hope, produced by Tangled Bank Studios, which highlights the efforts of people working to protect or restore the environment in all sorts of ways. And this month, they joined us and StarNet, which stands for Science and Technology Activities and Resources for Libraries, for a webinar on rewilding. That means restoring a degraded environment to a more natural state by removing exotic, invasive plants and adding or just encouraging native plants. Alex Duckles is a producer for Wild Hope, and he and his colleagues at Tangled Bank Studios produced a short video on rewilding using excerpts from several Wild Hope shows. And here's just a taste of that.
Whatever you call it, a native garden, an ark, a wild patch, it helps to let people know that something special is happening.
We ask people to put up a sign, and it gives them almost like permission to celebrate what they've been doing.
If we really want to bring native plants back, we need a lot of people from the community to participate.
It's, I think, so important to connect kids from a young age to what is here, what was here, what can be here again.
It doesn't take much to go back to becoming guardians instead of gardeners.
By embracing native plants, we can give local habitats a chance to recover and thrive. So let's reimagine what nature can be in our communities and work together to restore ecosystems that our native plants and wildlife can call home.
Duckles says rewilding is a great activity to get people outside and involved with nature.
This concept is the one that I think is so fertile for families, for school groups, for librarians, for kids to recognize as the best way to restore biodiversity around you, but also to contribute to this patchwork restoration of biodiversity at the state, at the national, and at the global level.
You can get additional information at our Wild Hope webpage, SciStarter.org/wildhope. And if you're doing some rewilding, let us know about it at info@SciStarter.org. Well, there are big rewilding efforts focused on restoring prairies and marshes and even coral reefs. But as we saw in the last segment, there's a lot that we can do with whatever little piece of land we've got. And while you can just pull out all the invasive plants to let the seeds of native plants sprout and emerge and thrive, that doesn't happen in my urban Washington, D.C. area yard because it's been so degraded for so long, there are virtually no native plants or plant seeds left there. You can just keep on pulling invasives until the cows come home and you have a nice patch of dirt, which is really sad. But luckily, I and my friends and neighbors cultivate and grow and share native plants with each other to try to get them reestablished. So when you think of rewilding, you might think you need a lot of land, but actually I've got so much in this little tiny patch. So we've got goldenrod, we've got Joe Pye weed, we've got spiderwort, we've got penstemon right there, beard's tongue, we've got amsomia, we've got coneflowers. We've got sedum. There's more here than I even remember. We have milkweed right there. We have purple clover right there. Sort of a native. It's not really native, but it's a good source of pollinators. We've got some yarrow, and and then we have some catmint over here. A lot of plants. Oh, and one more big cup plant here, which attracts pollinators like crazy, and also the leaves form these little cups and provide water for hummingbirds and insects and birds during the dry parts of the summer. It's funny, I'm competing with this catbird that's up here looking for a mate, but you may wonder what sorts of citizen science projects you could do with just a little patch like this, and there are so many just on iNaturalist alone. There are dozens and dozens of different projects you can do. You can look up individual plants and individual insects. You can look up pollinator interactions, things like that. There's lots of stuff you can do. Project Budburst is all about seeing when different plants flower in different parts of the country, and they're using that to track climate change and changes to ecosystem. So if you have a lot of different plants in your little patch, you can do a lot of science in just a little space. You could do Ask a Bumble Bee or Bumble Bee Watch, which is about tracking native bees and which pollinators they prefer, and that helps with insect conservation. You could do Monarch Watch or Monarch Larva Monitoring Project or Journey North, which is all about tracking monarch butterflies as they move north. So, little patch of native plants, whole lot of citizen science that you can do there. Now, if your rewilding interests lean toward the soggy and aquatic, this segment may interest you, because in addition to April being Citizen Science Month, it's also Frog Month, and SciStarter has a curated list of citizen science projects just for you. But of course, to complete a project, you need frogs. Frogs is what you need, and if you're unlucky enough not to have any frogs in your life, and you don't have the space or the inclination to build a big frog pond, you could consider making just a vernal pool. Vernal pools have water in them for only part of the year, generally spring and maybe fall, and then they dry out in between. And that is the perfect place for many frogs and salamanders to spend their tender tadpole weeks. In fact, they prefer temporary pools because there are no fish in those pools to eat them. Brian Gratwick is a herpetologist living in Virginia, and he made his own backyard vernal pools, and so I asked him if he could give us a quick tour.
Hey Bob, Brian Gratwick here. You wanted to have a look at some of my vernal pools. These are some of my most recently constructed pools. They've got a little boardwalk to go through. Here's the first vernal pool that I dug. So you see it's not very big, about 10 feet wide. It's also not very deep, but it's full of eggs and tadpoles. The white ones are spotted salamander eggs, and the little black dots are wood frog tadpoles swimming around with the spotted salamander eggs in the background. And if you look over here, there's some egg masses with the wood frogs just popping out right now. You see the newly hatched eggs. Very cool, teeming with life.
He says they don't need much space. Even a bathtub-sized pool, maybe a foot deep, would work, as long as you don't let it dry out for a couple of months. So, I am going to try putting one right back here in a low spot of my yard, and I'll report back and let you know whether we get any froggy or salamander action over the next few months. Now, for the April 8th total solar eclipse, I got to be down at the Dallas Arboretum helping our NASA partners share the NASA Globe Observer mobile app with a big crowd of eclipse viewers there, and I just happened to be standing near a group of excited middle schoolers just at the moment of totality, and well, they were pretty impressed. And then 4 minutes later, the sun returns. There were a whole bunch of citizen science projects centered on the eclipse, many conducted by or with NASA. And if you'd like to learn more about them and where they stand, check out this hour-long live event featuring NASA scientists discussing what they did during the eclipse and what they've discovered so far. You'll find it at our YouTube page on the NASA playlist. Finally, we go to Southern California, where one of the wonders of the natural world is taking place. The mating of the grunions. And just as those words are coming out of my mouth, I realize that does not sound particularly amazing or interesting at all. But these fish come flopping out of the water by the thousands during high tides to spawn. And the females use their tails to dig themselves into the sand up to their pectoral fins. That would be like their arms if they were tetrapods like us. And then the males kind of wrap themselves around them horizontally and deposit milt or sperm as the females deposit eggs down deep in the sand. Then the males hightail it back to the water, maybe take a nap, while the females wait to make sure the milk works its way down to the eggs, and then they flop back to the water themselves. And at the next high tide, a couple of weeks later, any eggs that haven't been eaten by like everything, birds and crabs and sandworms, everything eats these things, but the ones that survive hatch and the baby fish return to the sea. And there is a great citizen science project at SciStarter called Grunion Greeters that you can join if you live in Southern California. These amazing fish are in trouble because a lot of beaches get scraped and raked and developed, and they have no place left for their eggs to develop. So this project is monitoring their numbers and raising awareness. So grunion emerge into a new environment in an unpredictable fashion to evade their aquatic predators and kind of overwhelm their land-based predators with their numbers, kind of like periodical cicadas do. How's that for a segue? This year, in the US, there are 2 broods of periodical cicadas emerging to overwhelm the predators and other inhabitants of the central US. We'll have more on that in our next podcast, but that's it for this one. I'm Bob Hirshon. Thanks. This podcast is brought to you each month by SciStarter, where you will find thousands of citizen science projects, events, and tools. It's all at SciStarter.org. That's SciStarter.org. Thanks so much to you, the listener and citizen scientist, for getting involved, making a difference, especially over Citizen Science Month. You guys went above and beyond. If you want to share your experiences with us, or if you have any ideas you want to share, get in touch with us at info@SciStarter.org. Once again, that email address is info@SciStarter.org. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.